Welcome, everyone, to the Modern Sacred Women's Work podcast. My name's Abby Payne, your co-host, and we're excited to have conversations around what it means to be a modern woman, reconnecting with our sacred work as feminine beings, rebalancing the masculine feminine energies.
I love it. I'm Chelsea Henderson, your other co-host, and thank you so much for joining us for our messy, informal conversations where we just explore all that is so important to us and what we think is important for the world. Thank you and enjoy. Hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone. We're here for another episode of Modern Sacred Podcast, and we've got George for any of our video listeners.
Yay, George.
Hello. First man on the podcast.
Yes, first man on the podcast.
For our audio listeners, this is George. He is my little puppy. And
he's so cute.
Yeah, he's the patriarchy, my friends. This is the face of the patriarchy.
That's right. He is intact. Oh. He is not neutered. So
that's true.
You know,
he's not neutered.
He is an intact patriarchal man, and he's obsessed with women.
Yeah, he really is, actually. I feel like that's more because he just really loves that mom energy, less the power sexual thing, but maybe they're all tied together. Who knows?
Unless you're Kelly.
Okay, so
he loves you.
Man, does he love Kelly. Our friend Kelly was over last week, and he was having a hard time leaving her alone. He was like, okay, I love you. Let's get married. Anyway, welcome to our dog podcast, everyone. We're here to talk about dogs. All right. So we were just chatting beforehand. We were talking about what to talk about, and we're just thinking we want to dive in, right? And just talk about the nervous system. Because as I joked about in our last newsletter, no one is talking about the nervous system. This is completely pioneer shit here. We're talking about something totally new and unique. I joke. Okay, why do we want to talk about it? Because I feel like this summer has been incredibly challenging to be in and be present in. And I think a lot of what we're talking about in this space is being present through all the means. And if we can be present, then we can enjoy this all a lot more and do this all a lot better. And by this all, I mean life. And I think with the incredible heat that seems to be kind of a global affliction, and trying to be all things to all people as the women and as the keepers of everything, it's felt incredibly hard for me to stay regulated in my own body. And I'll say, I don't know how good at that I've ever really been. I think it's just been starting to occur to me as we've been really diving into this work and these last several years of being a mother, how much I was kind of just glossing over that whole part of my experience of just, I thought of caring for myself in still pretty perfunctory ways. I didn't realize the power I had in that space, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and how much like paying attention to this beautiful body and caring for it would allow me to have a better experience in this life and be better to those I love. So I feel like that's kind of where we're headed with this conversation. And then you brought up, since you've been going through this move and starting this new job, and also the heat. You were here last week with me and it was 100 degrees every day and we were melting and we were not top performing. So, I guess that's kind of it. Like, how do we want to approach it? How do we want to dive in? I will say, and then I'll stop talking. Oh my God. I feel a little corny having this conversation because I feel like this is things become trendy for a reason, but I feel like it is like
Yeah.
one of those things. Like this is the bone broth of the moment, maybe like a little bit, and probably for good
Yeah.
reason. But I can't help but feel a little silly, like, oh, this is this topic that we just came
Ta
up with. Like, no, it's not.
talking
It's
about like a big topic. Well, it's always interesting to me
yeah,
though, because just like if you're a Jeep owner and you're really into your Jeep, you notice all the other Jeeps and then you find other Jeep people and you're like, everybody knows about Jeeps. But I've noticed in my mind or in my sphere that I think everybody knows about nervous system regulation, and then I will talk to people who have never heard of it. And it's a good reminder of me, like, just because something is a buzzword in my own little world does not mean that it is common knowledge at all. And it could be that the people in our podcast sphere, it is common knowledge because we reach out to or we attract and vibe with conscious women living consciously and women who, love women's empowerment and somatics and the mind body connection. They do yoga, they do breath work. So the people who are listening to this podcast might be like, yeah, no, nervous system regulation. I get it. But for anyone out there who's listening who's like, what does that mean? I've not heard of that. Like what? Your nervous system, like what I learned about in 5th grade, like, skeletal system, nervous system, like brain and spinal cord, like what are we even talking about? So I think it's good to really
yeah.
open up the subject and talk about it and just fill in any gaps that people might have.
So can you with your nursing background, would you mind just giving a little kind of more practical
Yeah,
overview of what that means?
I would love to. That'd be great. Um, okay, so let's just dive in from the top. So your nervous system is a big umbrella term for like all of these other systems going on in your body. We obviously have like the brain and the spinal cord. That's your central nervous system. And then your peripheral nerves that branch out from the spinal cord into your arms, your legs, your heart, your diaphragm. That is a different nervous system, your peripheral nervous system. So we maybe have all heard of fight, flight, freeze. These are branches of your nervous system that are kind of these like automatic. Gosh, I feel like I need like a chart. Okay, so you have your automatic nervous system,
Get a
also
whiteboard.
called your autonomic. I know, I'm like, I need my chart of like the nervous system. You have your autonomic nervous system. I like to think of that as the automatic nervous system. These are the reactions going on in your body every day that you don't have conscious control over. This is your heart rate, your respiratory rate. If your blood is going to your muscles or your gut, this is how big your pupils are or not. This is if you're making saliva or not. These are all of the things that are going on that we can't like control. I can't like tell my pupils to get bigger right now. So that's the
Right.
automatic nervous system. And then you have your nervous system that's within your conscious control, your voluntary skeletal muscles, like putting up your hair or scratching your face, or if you have to pee really, really bad, but you're like giving a presentation at work and you're like holding it in. That is you overriding your autonomic, which is like, we have to pee. And you're using your conscious control to squeeze those sphincters and be like, nope, we're not doing that right now. So there can sometimes be like a little bit of a battle between
Right.
your like automatic and your conscious. But within the automatic nervous system, we have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic response. This is probably what people are a little more familiar with, which is sympathetic is fight, flight. And the parasympathetic is that more ease, flow, digestion. So the parasympathetic is called the feed and breed, or the rest and digest part of your nervous system. This is when you're feeling really calm and relaxed. And then the sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight. Heart is racing, like if you see a snake on the trail while you're hiking and your heart is racing and your pupils get big and your breathing quickens and you jump 10 feet back before you've even really realized that there's a snake. Like all of these automatic reactions happen before you go. Our slow little brains go, there's a snake on the trail. And all of a sudden, like, but you're already 10 feet back. Like your body it's got this amazing wiring to keep us safe. But that can just, it can cause problems when, in the modern world, we wire safety to things like money and housing and our jobs and getting a promotion or not. So like our safety has become much more complex than just like access to a stream and a cave to sleep in. It has become this very complex web of things that we need to feel safe. And if any of those things are shifting, then it can trigger that fight or flight. And that's where we're just always anxious and always really uptight, or shoulders are up to our ears, we're not breathing, deep breaths, our heart is racing and things like that. So that's just maybe like a very bird's eye view, and I feel like maybe could have explained it better, but yeah.
No, I love it. I think that was even some things that I feel like I haven't heard as much about. I think that also the bird's eye view is always helpful, right? I mean, don't take for granted that most of us don't have that knowledge, right? So it's really good to kind of put things in place. Also, so I'm curious, when we are in that, right, like we have all heard of the fight, flight, freeze, and now it's also fawn, right? We know that some people fawn, which I totally get that. I hate myself for it when I'm like in those moments and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's totally fine. Do whatever you want. And I completely disagree with everything happening, but I can't kind of like get into it, a different position with it. So that's all the system releasing different like hormones, right? So then where does cortisol fit into that? Because I know that is one of those hormones that I hear about. And then the other question I have is, where does the vagus nerve fit in? Because I have this mild obsession with the vagus nerve, but I don't.
Yeah, me too.
I don't totally get it. I just know that Osea makes this oil and this bath oil for vagus nerve, for vagus nerve calming. And so I, of course, through like products, right? Through products that I align with, I feel like I have a relationship with it. But I would love to hear what that looks like from your perspective, the medical perspective.
Great questions. So let's start with the cortisol question. When your brain registers a threat, and again, like I said, it's very complex what our threats are now. It's not just like an animal chasing you in the woods. It is an email from your boss that says, come see me in my office when you get a chance. And you're like, ooh, like, am I getting fired? Am I getting a promotion? Am I in trouble? All of these and then it's like, if I get fired, I'm going to lose my job and I can't pay rent. And it's like, whoa, okay, now we're off to the races. So our brain registers a threat. And then when our brains are so good at always scanning the horizon for patterns that have been threatening in the past. So it's always scanning for those patterns. So if when you're a little kid, your mom was like, come and see me come inside, and like this, I don't know, you'd be like, oh, I'm in trouble. Like those vagues, come talk to me, mean I'm in trouble. So then you apply that to your boss, whatever. So when you register a threat, your body starts to send off signals and hormones that would prepare you to face that threat. So that is adrenaline, cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It's released from your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys, and these release epinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol. These are the stress hormones. That is what gets your heart racing and your breathing fast and shallow, dries out your mouth, and all of those things. So that's like what's happening with our stress response hormonally. And then let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. Cortisol is normal and healthy. We all have cortisol. Sometimes I think cortisol is given just a blanket bad rap, But every single one of us, as we start to detect like sunlight when we're sleeping, you're starting to sense that it's becoming light out, your body naturally slows down melatonin.
Oh, for our listeners, we've had some tech issues and we're having a hard time getting a consistent recording here. Abby just dropped out. And I will say that you're talking about modern life triggering these responses.
This is part of
feels
it.
like a threat to me. It feels like a threat. I feel like failure just happened, but we're recording in an insulated environment. It's just you and I. Like, this is not live. We're not on television. It's really interesting how that relates to what we're talking about. Like, these types of things send that's my body. You're talking about cortisol being a good thing and being necessary. It helps wake you up in the morning. It helps that.
It helps keep you going. Yeah. You need it to survive. Otherwise, you would never get out of bed.
Right. Yeah. Which, there you go. That's a good thing. And also.
And it can help you adapt to stress, like, the traffic, there's a lot of traffic going on. Like, it helps you become more aware. It helps you you think a little bit faster. Like, there are certain times where it's just so good to have it.
Right.
But yeah, keep going. What were you saying?
So like in this moment, it's probably less necessary, right? Like, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. None of this is high stakes. This is a conversation between best friends, like just connecting around things that matter to us. Like, this is all very in nature, beautiful and good. But these moments make it feel a little existential in my body, which is really goofy when I think about it more analytically. In that moment where like you dropped off and I'm sitting here staring at myself and going, well, what the fuck are we doing? Is that cortisol is being flooded into my no, the glands live on top of the kidneys. It's being flooded into my system because I'm perceiving a threat. Right. So like in our old days, this was if you and I were walking through the woods having this conversation and I see a stick that looks like a snake and there are poisonous snakes in our area, that perception of threat would be a lot more real and something to act on. Let's jump away from this area. Let's get out of here. In this moment, we can't really do much with that, right? We just have to wait for the internet to kick back in, to reconnect us. Like, it's so... The actions we would take and the response, they're not matched up, right? And the threats are not, right? There's nothing existential here. So,
which it's interesting when we begin to analyze, like, there's two parts to nervous system regulation. There's probably more than two parts, but right now I'm just thinking two parts. Both, why is what I perceive as a threat? Why do I perceive it as a threat? This is the therapy side of it. Was it my mom? Is it anything unexpected triggers something in me, just like a snake being seen on the trail, like unexpected? Is it past trauma? Is it what's going on? Why? Because in this moment, I'm having no nervous system activation to what just happened. I'm like, my heart is not beating fast. I'm not frustrated. I'm not activated at all from that, but put me on an airplane and I'm really activated, even though it's the safest way to travel. And like, I'm about to have a panic attack. Yes. And why do I perceive threats of an airplane as dangerous? I mean, it's just kind of like, okay, you can analyze the threats and do some work there with like cognitive behavioral therapy and kind of trying to like exposure therapy. For me, it's really good to be on a lot of flights. Honestly, the more I fly, the less afraid of flying I am. If I go 2 years without getting on a plane, it's like worse.
Makes
the more that I fly, the more I'm like, I'm okay. See, you were fine. Like, you did okay.
Right. We didn't crash.
So there's like different thoughts with all of that, like exposure therapy and everything. But there's this new in quotes, train of thought. It's called a body first or a body-based approach, which is your brain. Is your brain responding to your body or is your body responding to your brain?
Oh,
And
fascinating.
what I mean by that is like we said with that snake on the trail, your body reacts to that before your brain has even registered that that's a snake. Like, it's so fast. So our brain is always scanning our environment for things that could be a threat to us. And sometimes it's reacting before our brain has even realized the threat. So then there's this new wave of thought of, what does it look like to kind of put the brain and the thoughts and all of that analyzing on the shelf and just work with the body and calming the body and helping the body feel safe. And you
That's
asked
kind
about the
of right up our
vagal
alley.
nerve, and that's
Yes.
exactly where the vagal nerve comes in, the vagus
Wait,
nerve.
wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you said two things about the nervous system. The perception, right? But what was the other thing? Did I miss it?
Yeah.
Did you say it and I missed it?
I think it's both the perception of the threat and then also just our body's response to threats. It's
Okay.
like, is it the
So that
brain or is
body,
it the body?
right. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
that body
Yeah.
first, which I find fascinating because I think you and I have both found so much, and I'm always struggling with how to put this, right? Trying not to be too grandiose, trying not to be too, self-obsessed. But the embodiment practices, how they have shifted so much of the quality of life for myself, right? And I feel like you and I have experienced this simultaneously throughout this work and in similar ways. And it's interesting because I think we live in a time that's very heady. We live in a time that's very analytical. We're a thinking society. Even therapy. I've been in talk therapy since I was a young teen, and I love it. It's a great space. It's a great space to hold myself accountable, to process interpersonal issues that I have. I love a good therapist who will ask me to stop and pause and, what's the story here? Right? I think that's all extremely important. And I feel like I benefit from it greatly. And I do one somatic workshop and I have moved mountains in my way.
Exactly.
And so it's pretty wild what's being held in the body.
Yeah. It's pretty cool what's coming out with somatic practices, breath work.
Yeah.
And for real, that stuff moves things.
Yeah.
Or just an awareness of nervous system regulation being more about the body and less about the analytical thinking mind. There's so much that the body holds inside of itself that is waiting to be processed. And that's another interesting thing about the nervous system when it comes to trauma. Trauma, I used to think of it as capital T trauma, which is like hurricanes, earthquakes, sexual assault, seeing something really big. But trauma is when your nervous system feels like the threat is too big to handle. So that could be like if you didn't get any sleep and you've got 2 little kids under 5 and they didn't get any sleep. One of them's got a stomach bug and your husband just lost his job and there's all this stuff going on and you get into a little fender bender on your way to take the kids somewhere. That could just so overwhelm your already overwhelmed nervous system that it is an extremely traumatic event. And then you have a big phobia of driving, and even getting in the steering wheel gives you like racing heart panic attacks versus another version of you who slept great, doesn't have kids, or the kids are doing great and just got out of a yoga class and you had your full thing of water and you get into a fender bender and you go, oh, it's all good. We just exchanged information. It's fine. So why is the same event traumatic to someone and not to someone else? And it's because your nervous system, trauma is whenever your nervous system feels like it can't hold what's being thrown at it. And we sometimes hold that trauma in our bodies as well, where your nervous system will hide it. It will hide that traumatic sensation somewhere in your body to be processed later. And this is where we can have like flashbacks, is there's like this residual energy of trauma being held in our bodies that is trying to come out. and be processed. But if your mind isn't in a place or you don't have good social support to like be held, we just keep shoving that shit down with a bottle of wine or smoking a ton of weed or watching a ton of movies, because it's like, I couldn't handle those big feelings then and I can't handle them now. So when are we in a place that's safe to let them out? I mean, when is this trauma going to be processed? And then you go to a breath work ceremony where you are in it for an hour. You're breathing deep, you're breathing fast, you're holding, you're exhaling, you're holding, you're doing these like body movements. And it's, in a way, it's like allowing the trauma that's stored in your body to release and truly release. And it's a safe container with the facilitator and everything. You might start crying, you might start, like, all of these things will happen, but it's like in this beautiful ritual that it's okay, and it releases, and it actually releases, like it's gone.
Right.
Which is really amazing. And some people will do something like that and feel like, wow, like I no longer have panic attacks, or I no longer have a hard time driving like before, you know, something shifted.
Yeah. So is that, I've heard about this idea of that emotions are chemical, right? There's hormonal reactions, and there's, you know, obviously situational, there's all these elements to it, but that the actual visceral body response we're getting is different hormones being released in response to different experiences. And so I've heard about letting it fully cycle, right? Like if I around, you know, when I was younger, my mother got sick and I was young, I had a lot of influences from different places, and I thought stoicism was like the cool girl thing to do, right? Like, you know, I wanted to be loved, I wanted to be accepted, and I wanted to be, you know, tough. And I had never been tough. And so it was very much a practice in that moment of my life to not feel the feelings, because I thought that was stoicism, and stoicism was cool. Cool. I mean, I was 15, so that meant a lot more back then. But that it was also just like, that was the way through, right? Like to be stoic, to, you know, to bypass almost. I didn't realize that. But then in not feeling those feelings through fully to the cycle, is that the stuckness, right? Like if I felt like I needed to cry and I didn't cry and I clenched my teeth and I bit my tongue, is that causing the stuckness because I'm not letting the cycle go all the way through, right? Like I had chemicals pouring into my system because I was afraid and I was sad and I was, you know, all those things. And then if I clench down and I don't let the expression happen, then those chemicals are not able to fully leave, and then they get stored in the tissues. Is that kind of what's happening?
Yeah, I think it's little less the chemicals themselves that get stored, but more so there's this guy, this author, his name's Peter Levine, and he has the somatic experiencing framework, and he's created this framework. He has a book called Waking the Tiger, and he talks about it's more like energy of the experience that's being held. And he talks a lot about like the gazelle being chased by the lion. And we talked about this a little bit when I was there, but the gazelle, it, you know, it runs, fight, flight, you know, it's flying, it's running as fast as it can. If it starts to feel like all hope is lost, it gets a bite on its hind leg and it's like, that's it, I'm done. It will get so overwhelmed that it faints. And that is where, if the nervous system gets so overwhelmed to the point that it feels like death is imminent, we will faint and collapse. And a lot of times in wild, what can happen, we shut down. What can happen is then the tiger thinks, I've caught it, I've killed it, and it will actually drag it to some shade or to its lair, and it will want to save it for later. And then the gazelle will kind of like wake back up and at first it will stand up and it will tremble from tip to tail severely. it will look like it is shivering in like the freezing cold, but that is releasing all of that energy of having
Right.
almost died. And
Right.
then it will kind of shake. It does that, that dog shake, and takes a deep breath, and then it steadies itself and it bolts. And that whole
Okay.
cycle is how these animals avoid trauma. Even though they live in like a really harsh environment, not like it will just go about
Totally.
grazing later that afternoon like nothing happened because it completed this cycle. And they've even looked at in animals where you stop that cycle, they will have PTSD. They'll have a lot of issues if you don't let them go through that whole
No,
cycle. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
So it's really
Okay.
important for ourselves to like let us go through the whole cycle. But similarly, I mean, we shut it down. That's the patriarchy. That's the patriarchy
Absolutely.
stoicism and don't
Yeah.
feel your feelings.
Yeah.
As an ICU nurse, I would have a patient die and I'm feeling a lot of big feelings and shaking and wanting to cry. And my charge nurse would be like, we have another one for you. Bag them and
Right.
tag them and let's get this room
Yeah.
clean. And I'm like, I don't have time to
Button up,
cry
bitch.
and break down for 2 hours. So
Right.
you shove it
Right.
down and like that energy doesn't just get a chance to cycle. So then if I go into a breathwork ceremony or something like that, that energy will reactivate and then all of the chemicals start happening. So it's not that like the chemicals get stored somewhere. It's more that this like energetic cycle didn't get to release all of the energy of that experience.
Okay.
But it's still like held there, like in your nervous system.
Right.
It's not resolved.
So then, because I know we know some folks, and I've done some versions of this before. I mean, I think that's where the somatic therapy is really shining through, is that it's actually activating your body, you're engaging your body, right? You're not just thinking it through, which is where I think we can get stuck, right? It's just the thinking it over and over again somehow doesn't fully process it. So then if you bring the body in and you are engaging in breath work, or like I know some of the folks in our sphere do like TRE, which is the actual like trembling.
Trauma release,
I have
where you get your body to tremble.
Yeah, I have literally shaken it off before when working with certain therapists around certain things. And is that even like, okay, we can go back into the vagus nerve, right? But if I know that like there's, even just certain, like the deep breath can activate the, the other side of the nervous system, which can calm. Journaling, speaking to it, right? Sharing with others. So these are all our kind of natural shake it off, right? That's our gazelle move to be like, okay, now, is there something else there that I'm missing that from that perspective of the body?
Yeah. I think what we're talking about is the difference between nervous system regulation as a baseline practice and what we've started talking about in the last 10 minutes, which is trauma. So trauma is that whole cycle of like something big happens that your body doesn't have the capacity to handle. And it's like, we'll handle that later. And then later never comes because there's never like capacity to handle it. And then it just, you get stuck in numbing and paralyzing and drinking and doing things to just avoid ever feeling those feelings. But something I wanted to share, and then I'll talk about little vagus nerve and everything, was I used to tremble whenever I would talk about my upbringing and my mom. I used to shiver so bad. It was so embarrassing. I just didn't know what was going on, and I would start to shake. And I even had some therapists where that would happen and they would say like, okay, let's stop, let's pause, let's take some deep breaths until the shaking stopped. But it was pretty pervasive. Anytime I would talk about my mom, my upbringing, I would start trembling. And then I worked with my friend, which we should actually have her on the podcast. She's a fellow nurse. She is a plant medicine guide and she does cannabis ceremonies and as a plant medicine. So she came over to my house, her and I met. And she came over to my house and I smoked some weed and I put on a blindfold and she had like music and she just took me into wherever the medicine wanted to take me. And I started to talk about my upbringing and I started to tremble really bad. And she was the first person in my life, despite having seen therapists, who said, just tremble. Just tremble. Don't try to make it go away. Don't try to deep breathe through it. I am here. I'm holding the space. The medicine has brought you to this. And so just shake it out. Just let your body shake. And I shook so bad. Like you could have, it was wild. You would have thought I was having a seizure, how much I was trembling. And I'm so thankful for Betsy for not getting in herself freaked out. Like, oh my God, what am I doing to Abby? But she was just like, yep, let it go. Yep, shake it out. It's okay. It's safe. Because she was aware of this somatic experiencing. And she was like, this is your body releasing the energy of being a little kid and seeing your parents fight and seeing all this, and you didn't have capacity to hold it, but like, I'm here to hold it with you. You can let it go. And I shook so bad, and then it naturally started to resolve, and I have never shaken when talking about my family ever again. And
that
it's something
is
that followed me my whole
amazing.
Life.
That's amazing.
Something
and it's so
released
powerful.
Because I was allowed
That's
to
so
tremble.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's
really powerful. And it shifted a lot of my thought process around, like, even within myself, where I'm like, okay, like, calm down, come on, breathe through it, like, let's shut this down.
Right.
Which is where ritual and containers of healing are so important, because when you're at work, when you're driving, when these times when this stuff starts like coming up aren't the times to process it, but working with someone who's familiar with these modalities, going to a breathwork ceremony where this is the space to let it all out is like just so beautiful. And I love to see that it's more common.
It is. I do too. And just for a second here, you just identified that we had moved from nervous system regulation to trauma and the nervous system. And I see this massive intersection in myself and I'm curious your thoughts on this, that if my nervous system feels shut down in certain ways, in certain times, in certain areas due to my trauma, how easy is it going to be to regulate on a daily basis? And then when we're talking about, like, you and I have talked a lot just in our personal lives, and I talk about this a lot with other women friends, the privilege that we have to be comfortable enough in our material, in our human lives, to even have these conversations, right? So what about the single mom working 3 jobs? Holy shit, I can't even imagine. And the reality is that's the majority of humanity is in that kind of set of folks who they're being bombarded, and the system that exists, unfortunately, thrives off of that. It is designed to perpetrate that upon them over and over again to keep them so overwhelmed that they can't do anything more. So how do we reach a point where that shifts, right? Like, I guess chicken or egg, right? Like, if I have a traumatized nervous system that's used to just being like, nope, can't handle it. Like, where's that 6-pack? Where's that, whatever it is to keep me from feeling this, and I don't have the tools, then how likely would it be to like regulate your nervous system on any regular basis? Which has to come first, which is more, I don't know. I guess that just, it sparked a kind of a curiosity in me. I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's so much that we're learning about nervous system regulation. And there's even something interesting about engaging with the natural behavior that's wanting to happen. And the thought that a story that I'm thinking of, which I think I read in that Waking the Tiger, Peter Levine book, is there's a group of boys who get trapped inside of a cave. And all the other boys are just like, oh no, we're trapped. Woe is me, we're trapped. And they're scared and they're shut down and they're not engaging with like trying to get out. And then there was this one boy who was like, no, guys, we can like dig ourselves out of this. Come on, get up. Like, take this rock. And he was very much like engaging with like the fight and flight and like, I think we can get out of this. And they were actually able to all group together and get out. And the boy who actively was like, we can get out of this, he didn't develop any PTSD. but all the other boys did. And I'm probably butchering the story, but that was the consensus, or what he was trying to say there was that sometimes engaging with, like, if you feel like you need to fight, like, fight, you know? Like, if you are the single mom working 3 jobs, sometimes that can, like, if you are like, no, I'm not just going to surrender to this victimhood, or I'm going to get myself out of this, and we are going to save, we are going to get out of debt, and we are going to do what we need to do. Sometimes they cannot develop trauma because they're like empowered.
Wow.
And so there's this interesting thing that happens between empowerment and victimhood, that when you're like, oh no, it's too big for me to handle, well, that's trauma, right? The nervous system says that's too big to handle. But if you're like, no, I can do this, I can fight this. And I see that with some single moms out there where they're like, holy shit, you are fucking slaying it. You've got a business, you've got 3 kids, and like, you're thriving, you know, you're really slaying it. Obviously, a lot of them aren't, and it's really hard, but it's still interesting why we develop trauma, and then also your support system has a big part to play, because if you feel like there are people around you to catch you if you fall, yes, you're treading water, yes, the bills are coming, but you know that, like, if you got evicted, you could all go to your mom's house and she would take you in. That, like, safety net, it's real. I mean, I feel that way with you. I'm like, if something were to happen, like, I could probably stay with Chelsea, you know, like, and she would, you know, get me back up on my feet. And knowing that is really big part of nervous system regulation, is like knowing that you have a safety net. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into our nervous system and why we might feel secure or not. And so then to shift over to like nervous system regulation, not so much the trauma.
Right.
A big part of that is like a community. Having social connections for our species is a big soothing. It soothes your nervous system in a major way to know that, like, I have people who love me, and I can call someone if I'm freaking out, and they're going to walk me through it. I can stay with Chelsea if something happened to Zach. I could stay with my mom, you know, like, there are just those different things that help us feel safe.
And then, okay, so we've talked about the trauma component, and then let's assume that, you know, no human life goes untouched by trauma in one way or the other, right? And obviously it's very subjective to the, you know, the person, the situation, lots of factors there, right? But let's say a person like myself who has had a lot of opportunity to heal trauma, to acknowledge that exists in myself, to see where it starts to affect me. And I've dealt with that. And I'm just now and dealt with it. I mean, it's always going to come up, but let's just say I've cleaned that slate a little bit. And now I'm looking to just regulate on a more daily level, right? Like creating that good community. We're social creatures, we're pack animals. That's obvious. That feels like so important. And it's harder and harder to do in this modern world. We're packed on top of each other and no one has any friends. You know, it's crazy. We don't even know our neighbors half the time. And that's culturally, that's designed, right? Again, it's easier to oppress when people don't have basic elements like that. That's, you know, again, we could talk about that all day. But then we're looking at, okay, so then where are we at with this? Is this about the deep breathing? Is this about meditation? Is this about good food? Is this about water? Is this about, you know, like talking to yourself? Like, what does that look like?
Okay, yes, let's get into that. It's something I'm really passionate about. So this is where the vagus nerve comes in. For anybody out there who's maybe not as familiar, the vagal nerve is a huge nerve that goes from the base of your skull. It's one of the big nerves that goes all through your body. It goes through your heart, your lungs, your diaphragm, your intestines, all the way down to your rectum. And it is 75% made of sensory fibers, and it controls your parasympathetic response. So what that means, to break that down, is remember your parasympathetic response is that rest and digest, feed, and breed, calm, relaxed state. So this vagus nerve is what controls that on switch to help you, the on switch of like, okay, we can relax. It's made of 75-80% sensory fibers, meaning that it is sensing into your heart and your lungs and your diaphragm and your gut. Is it safe? It doesn't have eyes. It's just got senses, and it's sensing tension in your stomach, breathing that's shallow, a heartbeat that's fast, tightness in your shoulders, tightness in your rectum. If it's sensing all of that, it's like, we must not be safe. We must not be safe. She's really tightened up, so there must be a threat. So let's keep the sympathetic on. Let's stay in fight or flight. And again, it's sensory nerves. So what we can do is to help our vagus nerve understand that we are safe is relax your belly, let go of your rectum a little bit, relax your pelvic floor. Take some deep breaths, drop your shoulders away from your ears. Breathe in, hold, and you breathe out twice as long as your inhale. And what that does is our vagus nerve is now sensing we are safe, and it will turn on the parasympathetic response and turn off the fight or flight response. This is the body first approach. We're not even dealing with our thoughts or our mind. We're focusing on calming the body to calm the mind. And what can happen with our vagus nerve is it's called vagal tone. So just like a muscle, the more that you use your parasympathetic response, the stronger that it gets. And the less that you use it, the weaker that it gets. Yes.
What?
Yes.
That is the coolest thing ever.
This is the coolest fucking part.
Shit.
It's really fucking cool.
Okay, I knew I was vagus nerve obsessed.
Changed my life.
I just didn't know why. Oh, that's so cool.
It changed my life when I learned this. I love it. Yes, like if you are constantly, this is hustle culture. This is over here, and I got to get the kids over here, and I got to get the laundry in, and I've got it this event, and it is, you need a lot of cortisol to be able to sustain that level of output. And you are running around, your heart is racing, you're not taking deep breaths, your belly is tight, you're holding in your poop, you're like had a lot of coffee, your pelvic floor is tight. And so you can live in fight or flight for decades, even when you sleep. Just because you're asleep doesn't always mean that you're not in fight or flight. This is stressful dreams, dreaming about work, dreaming about something happening to your kids, like those stressful dreams, because you can still be in some stage of fight or flight even when you're sleeping. And this was huge realization to me, because I was like, oh, I am never like in the blue, like calm and relaxed. I'm always in the red. I just go from red to red to red. Yeah, so you can train your vagus nerve, your vagal nerve, to be stronger and to become the default mode. So this is when therapists or whatever would say, like, you should practice breathing, you should do yoga, you should do these things. It was kind of like, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But knowing the science behind it for me, because I'm like, that's the analytical brain, it wants to know. It's like, if you engage in these practices every day for the next 30 days or 5 days a week, you will train your nervous system to choose rest and digest, because that's the stronger pathway as opposed to fight or flight.
That is wild. Okay, can I reflect for a second? Because so much is coming up. So, okay, we've talked about this before. I was raised in circle. I was raised in community. I was raised by wise women, right? My childhood trauma is obviously having a sick mother who died, having a father who was unavailable to love and protect me. It's, that's something, I suppose, trauma-wise, and gave my nervous system a lot of reasons to seek out drugs and sex and tobacco and food, for sure, to dissociate because of shame and all the things, right? So then being in talk therapy, acknowledging that, having amazing women in my life who continuously held up that space of like, you were the oldest child, you mothered your siblings, you helped your mother through the last phases of her life. Like, these are big things. Like, recognizing that for me was wonderful. Holding space was wonderful. And I got into my mid-30s. I had a child. I experienced some very bad advice around drugs that they had put me on, and had a nervous breakdown and had postpartum depression along with just, postpartum psychosis. It was a really dark time. And all of that, through all of that, I leaned a lot into the analytical side, right? Let's go to talk therapy. Let me reason myself through this. I'm grateful for that. I had severe psychotic episodes in postpartum that I think if I had not had a strong mind to say, like you said about that woman, right? That perseverance, that fight. I went into fight. I was like, I have a baby. He is the love of my life. I have 2 sisters that are the loves of my life. I have a husband who's the love of my life. I have friends who are the loves of my life. And fuck this. I'm not going down like this, right? Yeah. I will push through.
I am not going to become a victim to this.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to stand up and, do that thing. As hard as it is, I'm going to drag my ass through this for years. And that was wonderful, right? It did get me through to the other side. But, whichever, I think at this point doesn't really matter. I got through still very harmed. Right. I got through and I was like a little chihuahua. You came too close to me and I was like, like, get away. Don't touch me. Don't talk to me. I didn't have bandwidth. I lost friends during that period that I thought would never leave my side because I didn't communicate with them, and fuck them for not being strong enough to stand by and ask a question, but also fuck me for not being able to communicate because I was thinking my way through it, powering through it. It felt like a marathon. And then I kind of came back to my roots. And what I realized is a lot of what we were doing in those sacred spaces, in those women's circles, in that safe space where we could legit, howl at the moon, right? There's a reason why we do that, because it does express it. It moves, it gets things out. When I came back into those practices is when I really started to heal. Getting through it, not killing myself, not killing my child, not killing my husband, not going on a shooting spree, in DC where I just like, let me plow down some of these political cunts, I think that's the first time I've used the C word on the podcast. Here we go. That felt like an accomplishment to me. Like, I had done it. I had made it. I had survived, but I was still just surviving. Then bringing in the getting back into the sacred, getting back into the body was what shifted me back into having a life that was worth living. So surviving, yes, but it was not a life worth living that to me, right? It was just this kind of like, because I couldn't release, I couldn't let go. I mean, I was just like, it was like a tightly strung thing that would snap at any moment. And so, gosh, I had a point, but I guess I was really just reflecting. But that to me is fascinating because
that's great.
That is the difference there, that little shift into, okay, this is how we get back there. And I think this past weekend, right, we had our goddess dinner. We connected with a lot of friends. And that was the thing coming up for all of these women in 30s, 40s, 50s, some even into their 60s, is like, this is the work of kind of getting back to self, right? That part of me that goes, gosh, when I was younger, it was so easy to enjoy things. Well, yeah, because I think I lost that vagal tone. I lost that, I didn't work that muscle.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I was just, thinking my way through. And then all of a sudden I'm trapped in my thoughts. And that's my war zone where every day I'm in there, just, okay, I got to think to this point. I got to get to this point. And then you bring the body in, even just now when you were talking about it, my eyes closed, my breath out, lengthened, my body, it's a feeling, it's a ratcheting. You're just tight, tight. And then and it just releases. It goes from being a tight cord to a soft silk. And it is a massive shift.
It does it. You feel it shift. You feel it shift.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's
fucking magical. It is
it's
magical.
magic. I was just going to say that. It's magic. It's magic.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it gives you so much agency over your body.
Yes.
So I go back to the vagus nerve. I'm like, vagus. Yeah, I think they're interchangeable. So it runs down the sides of our neck right here.
Yeah.
You can put an ice cold washcloth on your neck and that will slow your heart rate down and lower your blood pressure. It will stimulate that area. Also humming and singing stimulate the vagus nerve, both with breathing, because it's you're breathing and you're humming. It's usually slower breath to hum a song or to sing or to chant, and it vibrates these nerves right here. And then you can do 4-7-8 breathing, which is where you inhale for a count of 4. And you have to fill your lungs all the way to the tippy top, where you inhale and then you inhale again. And you hold, and you're holding big, full lungs compresses the vagal nerve all the way between your heart into your diaphragm. And it is compressing it and squeezing it and stimulating it. This is actually how we, in medicine, can flip people out of lethally high heart rhythms. It's called SVT, supraventricular tachycardia. These people, they're sitting at rest and their heart rate is 180. And you can die from this.
Whoa.
And the first thing that we try is we tell them to take a big, deep breath and try to shit their pants, because bearing down also stimulates your vagal nerve.
Okay.
If that doesn't work, we'll give them one of those tiny coffee straws and we'll tell them to take a big, deep breath and to blow as hard as they can into the straw. And that creates a lot of pressure in your thoracic cavity. And all of that, I've seen people heart rate go from 180 to 75. Because we are stimulating the vagus nerve, which is taking them into a parasympathetic state where your heart rate is lower. So this is strong, powerful, magical stuff that we can do, not only in an emergency if you have a high heart rate or something, but on the daily, to take those deep breaths and to just begin to train your nervous system to be able to flip at will into rest and digest. So 4-7-8 breathing has been my godsend. Ice on the neck, cold washcloths on the neck, and then trying to release your belly and not I hold so much tension in my belly. Taking big belly breaths, connecting with friends, getting sunlight, things that make you feel like you're in a restful state. All of that is strength training for your nervous system. And eventually you train it to the point that you're not really anxious, because you live over here. And this is, the brain's always going to follow path of least resistance. So if it's trained to go towards rest and digest, it's going to be harder for it to choose anxiety unless there's an actual snake on the trail. And then you're like, wah, but then you recover and you go back to your default state of rest and digest. Now, the problem that we see is the hustle culture. This is where, sometimes it might mean that you quit your job. It might mean that you quit your job and you move to a cheaper apartment so that you don't have to work 60 hours a week, because there's a certain lifestyle factor at play in the American Western society where it's 60 hours a week. None of us are sleeping. None of us are eating well. It's pretty challenging to regulate that kind of a nervous system that's having that much demand on it. Like, I quit my job as a nurse, and that was like resolved a lot of stuff. And now that I'm back to doing nursing 3 times a week, I realized this week when I was visiting you, I need to do 2 days a week. 3 days a week for me, it's really hard on my nervous system to sustain that level of output. And the path of embodiment and regulation is a slow path. And it's a path where we work a little bit less and we take time to just be and to breathe and to sit in the sun. Like, all of those things take time.
Yeah.
So it's a lifestyle change.
Yeah. A lifestyle change. And those of us who have the privilege of space to make those choices, I think it's so incredibly powerful that we do this work, because I think the system has to change. That shouldn't be so.
Yeah.
We shouldn't live in a system that relies on the bulk of humans being strung out to the point of breaking to sustain the few at the top. And so I think that if we can, those of us who have the fucking good fortune to live in the middle somewhere, to really be, to have these conversations makes me feel empowered, because I get the most spun out these days thinking about that pyramid of awful that this system is built as, and how ugly and horrific it is that the ones who do benefit off the backs and blood of the others. And so, instead of getting lost in that and being sad about it, I think instead I choose to really lean into this work and recognize that it is my beautiful privilege in this lifetime to get to practice this. And then how can I free up some more bandwidth and space for the collective to allow a little bit of that pressure to come off, the foundation, the base.
And that's the feminine.
That's the
as
feminine.
well. That's what we talk about here with balancing the masculine and feminine energies. Is the feminine energy is slow, receptive, open, juicy, and embodied. And you can feel that when you're in the presence of another person or woman who is really embodied in that way. They feel slow and they feel expansive, and they just, it's Grandmother Willow in freaking Pocahontas. Like that's that. She was just like my favorite growing up, but she's here for it. She's like, what are we doing? Let's talk. Like, just that kind of feeling. And I hear what you're saying too about like the, all the people out there who maybe aren't in the middle. I also work with people in medicine or just other things where there's so much societal keeping up with the Jones that I think keeps people in a place where they could escape it. I work with so many people who get a new car every 3 years because they think that they should. And their current car works perfectly fine, but they trade it in for a new one and trade it in for a new one 3 years later. Or they live above their means in order to impress other people or to keep up with other people. And like, selling your car and getting a Honda Accord, a 2018 Honda Accord, and driving that thing until it's done, and maybe living in like a little bit cheaper of an apartment, or I don't know. I think that there's a lot of empowerment to be had, and also things that we have coming up, listeners, learning how to manage your money as a woman, learning how to save for retirement, learning how to invest helps take a pressure off my nervous system to know that like I'm planning for my future. I've got investments. I know what to do with my money. I know how to budget. I have a high yield savings, all of those things. So it's like education. It's saying fuck off to having a new car every 3 years. I'm going to drive this car. I'm going to pay it off, and it's going to be my car for 20 years. And I'm going to be the person with an old beat up car, but I'm going to be, whatever. There's certain things where I think that we can get out of some of it to where we can make a little bit of room in our lives to chill. Or just learning to say no to things and to people.
Absolutely.
Which is hard for me. No, I can't volunteer this weekend. No, I can't. No, because I need space for me. And that is so hard as women to say no to
Yes.
others and
Yeah.
being asked to be on this project and whatever
Mhm.
and making room for yourself and putting yourself first. Yeah, there's so much that
Yeah.
goes into creating the space for nervous system regulation.
And I think you spoke to it a little bit, with the feminine. The feminine is a little less concerned with the superficial. I think in this culture, it's really amazing to see how distracted by the shiny thing so many people are, and they don't realize that that's by design. There's the design there. If you're distracted by the shiny thing and you are completely overextending yourself to get to it without realizing that getting to it just makes you want the next shiny thing, it's really easy for the powers
Yeah.
that be to exploit you and take advantage of everything, all the output that you're generating, and I
Yeah.
think that is something the feminine can find, and the balance, right? It's not just the feminine, the balanced feminine and masculine can find satisfaction
Yeah.
in the day to day, can find satisfaction in each other, right? I mean, that those moments of just, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be, right? That is something that when we're
Yeah.
more balanced, that allows for that. And then we don't need the next thing as much. And we don't
Yeah.
taking the focus off. It turns out a car is a functional tool that loses value the second you drive it off the lot. So to think that you are getting anywhere with that, aside from just, having a nice functional car, absolutely. I appreciate that very much. I want to have a car that won't break down, that has, working functions, but that is completely doable, and it doesn't need to be the thing that is drowning me
Yeah.
because it's so expensive. And
Yeah.
I think that can be really hard. It's clothes and nails and makeup and, technology,
Botox and hair
holy
and
shit, dude.
lashes.
It's
I mean,
just
for
so
women
much.
especially, we've talked about this with the she
Oh, that's
economy.
the she
Well,
economy. Yeah.
it's a
We're the
lot. We
target.
pay for a lot of stuff.
Yes, we
Yeah.
do.
We pay for a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. And I think that the powers that be, they know what they're doing. They're using our nervous system against us. They're using artificial
Yes.
scarcity to
Mhm.
incite fear and to promise that if you had this thing, you would finally feel safe.
Yeah.
You would
Yeah.
finally feel like you could relax. It's going to free up so much time. And if you
Right.
have this new shiny car, imagine how safe you'll feel driving your family because you know you're
Right.
at the highest safety profile. Like they are very much,
Mhm.
all of them are using fear and scarcity to fuel you to make purchase decisions when really, I mean, after basic needs, food, water, shelter, climate controlled shelter, like a lot of those things, what I find is like my own nervous system, my own deep breath is where I find a lot of what I think all this stuff I'm going to buy me is going to get me. Now, I have experienced recently that you can go the other way because I lived in a $1,000 tiny house with not a flushing toilet and ants everywhere, and it was no AC, and that put me into some serious fight or flight. That took me into a serious spiral of fight or flight because I didn't feel safe in that home. I didn't feel like I could empty my bladder easily because I have to empty this pee jug somewhere and it created. So yeah, I was saving money, but there's a balance. It's like, okay, you want to be comfortable and give your nervous system a safe, healthy place to live. And I don't know, it's something we all have to balance, what is worth spending money on and what's not.
Yeah.
But
It's a balance.
yeah, I think it can
and
be
it's
pretty
subjective,
simple.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody's different. And so I think recognizing that too, what works for me, I agree. Yeah. And I think it's finding what works for you and then really leaning into that and finding your reasons, right? But anyway, I mean, that's, for me, I know I'm honing in on what
It
works
all
for me.
connects.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. And then the awareness and the knowledge of just how your nervous system works and these different phases of fight or flight. We didn't even get into the freeze. If you get too overwhelmed, you can go into freeze mode where you're not necessarily passing out, but you're numbing out. You're like, I've flipped from I can to I can't. You're like, I used to think numbing out was me relaxing. I used to think enjoying 2 beers at the end of a shift was me coming down into my parasympathetic, but really it's you're just numbing out the sympathetic. True parasympathetic is you can feel it. It's just like that whoosh, it's that Shavasana. It's like you don't need substances to get there. It's harder to get there. But yeah, it's knowing where you're at and what your nervous system's doing and having tools to,
I love that. I love that.
direct
And I
it.
think the more that I've done this work, the more I get to use substances for fun. That glass of wine with friends is
Same.
to get a little buzz and to feel like fun. I smoke that bit of weed on the weekends so that I can do my oil painting or put up my wallpaper in my entryway and just fuck around and have fun. And so, yeah, I think it just shifts it so much. It's really beautiful. When I was at the height of my postpartum depression psychosis, I was smoking pot anytime I was awake. And it was horrible because I had always had this really creative relationship with cannabis that was fun. And it would stimulate me to want to connect and go on a walk and be in nature. And then I was using it as an epic crutch. And I was on multiple different medications for depression and psychosis. And it was I was so disconnected and it felt so bad. And then now I'm back to like, if I want to hit a joint, I'll take 2 puffs and like I'm giggling and having fun. I'm joking with my husband. I'm having fun with my friends. I'm cooking food. I mean, you and I got stoned and prepped for the goddess dinner together and it was fun. It was such a good time. And it kind of, again, it just gives you that empowerment around these things that, you get to use it the way you want it, right? I get to shop because I want a specific thing that I think is really going to bring me some value in my day-to-day life, not because it fills this insatiable dry well, right? And that is so powerful. It feels amazing.
Yeah, you can feel the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel the difference. And yeah. It's so nervous system regulation. It's trendy for a reason because we're learning a lot of stuff about it. And I continue to learn more about the science of it and how it all works. So I think it's a great pillar for us to kind of talk about just how your body, works. The endocannabinoid system, your nervous system, your hormones as a woman, perimenopause, like there's, just the more I understand about my body, the more I can kind of be like, I know what's going on here.
Yep.
This whole move the last 6 weeks. I'm like, okay, Abby has been in fight or flight for 6 weeks straight. This is unsustainable. Right. So, we did what we had to do. We got out of the ant-infested place, and now I'm needing to spend some more time getting back to my baseline, doing some breathing, having empty days where I don't have anything planned, and just like retrain my nervous system not to live there because it will want to stay there, So just knowing how it all works has been so empowering for me and for people I've worked with. It's been like just a really cool. That's why there's a reason it's popular.
And I love that. I'm glad we talked about it. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and for exploring this topic and sharing the kind of physiological blueprint reality here, whatever you might call it, because it does help to, there's those things that feel like intuition and gut. And then you hear that, like medicine and science have actually outlined this. And it is what you intuitively thought it was, whatever reason brought us there, that slowing down, having that slow day, hugging a person you love, drinking a glass of water, cooling your body down, getting that baseline temperature back when it's 100 freaking degrees outside, like all of those things do matter for a very specific reason. But it's even, now I feel so much more empowered knowing those ins and outs. Like, I can train this like a muscle. Oh, I'm so jazzed.
Yeah.
This is why I've been loving this oil, these baths, with this oil. We have no relationship with them, but Osea, if you have a little extra money to spend on yourself, their vagus nerve oil and their vagus nerve bath oil is incredibly luxurious. And I am obsessed with it.
Sounds so good.
It's so good.
It sounds delicious.
It is.
We can put the link of it in the show notes.
We should. We should. Yeah. I love it.
We should.
If I get the chance to take a bath, I'll drop some of that in there, and I'm just on another level.
Yeah.
So, my God. Okay, I love you. You're such a freaking genius. Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
I love you.
This has been cool.
You're so welcome. I'm glad it's helpful for people. Yeah, me too. Yeah, and it just continues.
So helpful.
There's so much there.
All right.
I'll
Well, thanks
include
everyone for
a
joining
PDF
us.
little
We love y'all.
thing. Love you. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
I love you. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Modern Sacred Women's Work podcast. We're so glad you came.
If you'd like to learn more about Modern Sacred, our offerings, book clubs, and women's events, you can go to modernsacred.com or follow us on Substack.
We were so happy you were here with us.
I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening.